Hello once again, and thanks for tuning in to the Catholic View for Women, where we give you news and views from a truly Catholic perspective. I'm Teresa Tomeo, of course, along with my beautiful co-host, Astrid Bennett Gutierrez, who's the Executive Director of the VITA Initiative, and Janet Morana, who is the co-founder of the Silent No More Awareness Campaign and the Executive Director for Priests for Life. And you also see Janet right here on Defending Life, and you hear both of these ladies on my radio show, Catholic Connection. Before we go on and introduce our topic, we have to give a big thank you to our Pastoral Director, Father Frank Pavone, who's a National Director for Priests for Life, and of course, a pro-life warrior, bar none, author, speaker, and really keeps us in line on the show.
That's right.
To make sure that everything we say is theologically sound.
All our I's are dotted and T's are crossed theologically speaking.
Yes, and so in addition to, obviously, the network, looking at our scripts, we also run it by FF, as we call them. So thank you, Father Frank, for your support and your advice as our pastoral director. All right, now the topic of this show is really near and dear to my heart, as you know, because my whole story of reversion came through the miracle healing of our marriage. So we're going to be talking about conversion and reversion in marriage. And you two ladies are going to be sharing, well, I did see the clip, but wait till you see this story. But I want you, both of you, to talk a little bit about Jessica.
Yes, well, we were out in California.
That's right.
And we had the privilege to interview Jessica Echeverry, and she's an amazing woman, just a tremendous testimony, one of the most powerful ones I've ever heard, and a very humble woman, and she's very generous in sharing her story. So in particular, we asked her about her conversion. She's a convert to the Catholic faith, and how her marriage played a part in that. And she shared with us a little bit about that aspect of her testimony. She's a Catholic speaker as well, who goes around the country sharing her story. So we're really blessed to hear her story. So check out this clip.
All right, let's see what she has to say.
I would say that my husband being a cradle Catholic, and more looking back, I would say more of a culture Catholic, even though his parents were extremely pious and practicing, that for him, and knowing his personality, whenever I had a question about the Catholic Church, he couldn't answer it. And so that bothered him. And so I think the more questions that I had for him, the more it led him into, I really want to have an answer for her. And at the time, I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice that he was thinking about these things, and it was in my talking about things and asking questions that within his own spirit was work being done. And he was just always Charlie to me, and always there, and always loving, and the same husband. So I didn't really give his, what he calls reversion into the Catholic faith, much thought. I am a Catholic. My family is strongly Catholic, and I do believe these things, but what's the why? That was what it seemed like he was sent out on this quest. At the same time that I was going through my own questions and figuring out, well, do I want to be Catholic? Do I not want to be Catholic? Why should I be Catholic? Well, my kids are Catholic. All these things going through me. For him, God was working in him with you are something, but why? And we were kind of strutting along these two paths together, yet separately. And I don't want to say, though, we weren't ever in conflict, though. And that's just our marriage. I mean, we may have had times where I didn't agree with something that he was sharing with me about the Catholic faith. I can't say that it was ever a conflict that separated us. We had to have received many graces from being open to wanting to learn. And maybe there were some times where I felt like I was really excited about learning this and he wasn't, but his not being excited wasn't necessarily about, I'm not really interested in this. It was more about, I'm working on this over here. I'm not at that part yet. So I would really say that we were moving along together yet separately, not necessarily with a lot of conflict, though, in our journey. Going to Mass and me coming into the Catholic Church, I truly believe that I received so many graces from trusting God and saying, you know what, I don't know what this is all about, but I'm going to trust you, God, and I'm going to follow you on this road that you're leading me in. And so the graces that I feel like we received were, my husband and I were both walking on our paths closer to God and becoming more educated about the Catholic Church and the why behind why the Catholic Church is what it is and what it does. My husband, there was one Sunday where a deacon was presiding at Mass, and he gave the homily. And I remember after that Mass, I looked at him and I said, "What's a deacon?" And he didn't know what a deacon was. And he later shared with me that he himself felt moved with all those questions inside of him. Who is this guy coming up that's not the priest? What is this deacon figure? What do deacons do? How come he's allowed to give the homily? He's preaching. Wow, that's pretty amazing. He's married. Why is he married? So all these questions were going through my husband, and he would say that that is when he felt like God was kind of leading him into this, I want you to learn what a deacon is, because that's what I'm calling you for. He was feeling this interest in this curiosity towards what a deacon was, and I was continually teaching the Sunday catechism classes. Now I had developed my own curriculum, and the classes had grown into a great success. People had waiting lists to get their kids in. It was phenomenal. We really felt like we were in such a good place, and I felt like God had graced us with so many blessings. But my husband shared with me, I want to find out more about being a deacon. Now, I didn't understand exactly what being a deacon was, and I just trusted him. I said, okay, well, what do we have to do? I'm a very practical person. If you want something, then we do A, B, and C to get it. So the first thing we had to do was go to an information night or information day or meeting, and he said the Archdiocese puts them on. I said, okay, well, you should look into that and see when it is. Months and months went by. He never said anything else to me about going to one. And then one day, he was traveling on business and was in New York. And there's a 3-hour difference, and he went to Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral. And when I woke up that morning, I went to my computer, and I don't know why, I thought, well, you know what? He mentioned something about wanting to go to this. I wonder when the next one is. And I went on my computer, and I got the information, and I took a screenshot of it, and I texted the next informational day for being a deacon in our Archdiocese. And I just texted it to him, and I was like, I just thought you might want to see this. He comes out of Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral, and he was thinking to himself when he was coming out of Mass, gosh, I really want to find out more about being a deacon. And when he looked at his phone and he saw that there, that was confirmation for him that, okay, this is where God is leading us. And it's actually been through joining the diaconate formation program as a couple and going through that journey together that we've been able to learn so much more about each other and our hearts and our faith and our church and our family as a whole. And so we've received so many graces and blessings from being open to take that walk, to go on that journey into the diaconate. And God willing, he will be ordained a deacon next year.
Wow. Yeah. I can relate to her so much in terms of going through formation and what that means and what that does. And the wife is very involved in that. You cannot move forward in the diaconate as a husband without your wife's support. So that whole process it's very powerful. Yeah.
What's even more amazing, Astrid and I really got a chance to talk to Jessica in depth for this interview. Her life is just so astounding that to see where she is now, and if you saw where she came from, the life she had in the past, you would say, how did this happen? And I think it's a great encouragement to anybody. First of all, she was raised in a family where there was absolutely no mention of God, no upbringing of any kind of religion, zero. Then she had some tragedies happen to her. Like she was molested at age 10. She was raped at 12. She got pregnant as a young teenager, and they were trying to force her to have an abortion. 3 times she left the clinic. She finally had that baby, but then the boyfriend, and she thought, this was my boyfriend, I'll be with him forever. It didn't work out. His family agreed to raise the baby. So from the hospital, the baby was taken from her. Her mother,
like a movie.
and her mother threw her out of the house. So now she was down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, homeless on the beach, and she ran into other teenagers. I mean, that's why she has this ministry she does, Sore Feet Saviors, because she tries to reach out to other homeless teenagers because she knows what it was like to be like that.
Right.
So from that, she had this terrible life, homeless for a couple of years. She became pregnant again, and she called her mother, even though her mother threw her out of the house, and her mother said, well, this time you're going to have an abortion. And her mother dragged her off for an abortion. And then, she again left, that situation and went back homeless and then said, I have to end this. And she finally got herself a little part-time job, from that a full-time job. She became pregnant again. This time she said, I'm going to have this baby. And she had that baby. And it was a year later after that she met her husband, Charlie. And he, of course, adopted the baby, and she went on to have children between her and Charlie. But who would think? How many people have little things happening in their lives, or even one tragedy, and they say, that's it, God doesn't love me. And that's what she was saying to us. Remember, as a teenager, she thought there was no such thing as God. Why would God let all this stuff happen to me? And look at how full circle her life has
Look at
come.
how she's using everything that she went through to make a difference, whether it's her own story and her husband's story in terms of what they're going through, the diaconate now, and his reversion and her conversion to Catholicism, her ministry that she has to the homeless, and I know there's a whole area of pro-life that you're going to be looking at on defending life as well. But see, this is the whole idea that miracles can happen, and then when you come together as a couple, it's huge the impact you can have, because marriages right now are struggling.
That's right.
We hear about it all the time, Deacon Dominic and I. And so I'm so glad that we have this story. What an amazing story.
Yes, I met them 5 years ago, and to see them together, it's incredible. They love their faith so much. They have a generous spirit, always so joy-filled, and they're an example to me of what marriage should be. So to see where she's come from, and to see where they are today, it just shows God's power when you give your life over to Him.
Right.
How incredible your life can be.
And I think too that the idea that, now we know that there are people in difficult situations, and maybe, and we hope that every marriage can be saved, but it's possible that there's circumstances that a marriage might not be able to be saved. But in this case, when you do work through a lot of these obstacles, miracles happen. And Dominic and I are a witness to that. Our whole conversion came through struggles that we had in our marriage. We were forced basically to our knees. And so it's beautiful when you come together as a couple to speak out.
And notice what Jessica said, that they weren't in conflict about this journey they were on together, but it was her curiosity about the faith, because she said, well, I got married in the church, and for Charlie it didn't really mean much. Even though he was raised Catholic, he just wasn't a practicing Catholic, really, And so they got married in the church. They promised to raise their kids Catholic. So she was trying to just be a good mom. And how do I do this job real good, So it's just an incredible story.
Her humility is what made it happen.
We'll be back to talk more about Jessica's story and also more about conversion and reversion in marriage on this episode of The Catholic View for Women. Please stay tuned. We do hope you're enjoying this episode of The Catholic View for Women. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with Astrid Bennett Gutierrez and Janet Morana, talking about conversion and reversion in marriage. What do I mean by reversion? Well, we're all reverts.
Reverts, that's right.
You hear about converts. Those are folks who either maybe convert from, maybe they were atheistic, agnostic, or another denomination. But when you're a revert, you're grown up in the Catholic faith, fallen away, and you come back to the church. And Jessica herself, the woman you saw in our video clip prior to the break, she was a convert.
Right.
Her husband was a revert. A beautiful story.
Yeah, it really is. And it just shows you, you know, the path you can be set on when you just trust and inquire. If you notice, what got her to convert was wanting, I think, to be a good mom. And she promised to raise the kids Catholic. She actually taught CCD, just helped out. And it was all the curious questions that caused her to want to seek more truth and more truth and more truth. And it was her seeking truth about the Catholic Church to convert caused Charlie to say, oh, I don't know the answer to that, and I guess I should. I was raised Catholic. How come I don't know these things? So now he went back, took a step back and said, I have to rediscover my faith. And I think, you know, we can all identify with that because of the fact that the three of us are sitting here as reverts.
Right.
And there was that period where, I know in my case, I was Catholic school all the way, grammar school, high school, college, screw up. And I went away from the church. And I'm still learning. That's what I find. Like, you know, in our last episode, we did the doctors of the church. And in preparation for that episode, I was reading and saying, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. I didn't know this.
It's pretty incredible.
It's pretty incredible.
It's
you
when
know?
Protestants maybe challenges and we're like, well, I don't know how to answer that. And then you become curious.
Yes.
God begins to show you. One of the first strong experiences that I had in my reversion was hearing converts speak about converting to the Catholic faith. And I was astonished. I had never heard of this phenomenon. And it was incredible to see that they were finding these treasures that we have in the church and that we've had all along, and that we have no idea about. At least I didn't know about the Eucharist, about all these treasures we have.
Well, Scott Hahn says that Catholics are sitting on Fort Knox and they don't even know it.
Exactly.
Because we don't crack into it. We take it for granted. Another friend of mine said that we're like the spoiled kids on the block with the fancy Mustang or the fancy sports car.
are
We're driving
spoiled
around
and don't
we
know
don't
it.
realize what we have
We've got
in the
Yes.
Eucharist and the
Yeah.
saints and 2,000 years of church teaching. And when you share that and break that open as a couple, huge things can happen. I mean, when you were talking about the fact that you think about what Grace has done in her life and how now her husband, God willing, will be ordained a deacon and the ministry that she has and all the trouble she had. I feel the same way every time I see Dominic up on the altar. How did this happen? When we came close, and most people who've been watching the show for a while know my story, we came close to divorce. And now he's a deacon and I'm on Catholic radio and TV. How does that happen?
Praise God.
Go figure,
It's
you
all
know?
the grace of God.
Yeah,
It
I
is.
mean, another couple example, of course, is Kimberly and Scott
Scott Hahn,
Hahn.
amazing story.
Right, and of course, they
They were
came-
not on the same trajectory
page.
at the same time.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
they came in at different
Well,
times.
they're
Right.
very faithful Christians, you know, Protestant
Right.
Christians.
He was a pastor.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing about it is, and I find a lot of converts come out of the pro-life movement because they
Right.
find
They do.
the teachings of the church,
Well, especially the teachings of contraception.
Contraception.
So Kimberly was studying and she found out about this teaching of the church, that the Catholic Church had not changed its teaching, where all the other denominations had began to, you know, fold with the teaching on contraception. And then Scott started to look at that, and then he became curious and started to go to Mass and observe the Mass. And then, you know, so she had basically given him the seed that
Planted those
planted the
seeds,
seed.
right.
Yeah.
But her father was a big Protestant pastor and was involved in some pretty major ministries and nationally out there on the front lines as a very wonderful Christian man. But they had a very, very different idea of the Catholic Church. They saw it as, you know, they had earlier accepted a lot of these stereotypes that are put out there by the media, by the culture, and of course in the fundamentalist movement. And so she did not come along right away. I mean, she basically for a while, as she says in the book, was kind of brought along kicking and screaming, and she resisted a lot because she didn't want to be Catholic, you know, anything but that. And then eventually when Scott's life turned around and they really began to embrace it, now look at them. I mean, they're phenomenal.
Both of them are joyful Catholics.
Yeah.
I met her when she was already
Right.
converted, so I could never imagine her not loving the Catholic faith. She's so enthusiastic about it, about the church's teachings on love and marriage. It's very inspirational to hear them.
And what else do you say about Scott Hahn? I mean, you just say the name. I mean, the books and the Bible studies and everything.
Biblical
Incredible biblical scholar.
Well, then, of course, you know, Teresa, you and Dominic wrote a beautiful book called Intimate Graces, and it's available at the EWTN Religious Catalog. And I'd like to just read for our viewers. There's a I like this one section where it's almost like giving some advice, you know, for couples who, married couple, and okay, so how do we stay on that grace-filled path? So here we go. This is from page 67 of your book, T. Celebrate your life together as a married couple. Make the most of every day. Hold hands. Break out the good china. Create a scrapbook of your happiest moments. Acknowledge the pain of the past, but do not allow yourself to remain in that tomb. Pray for the grace to, like Lazarus, unbind him and let him go. Pray the serenity prayer together as you help each other. Let bygones be bygones. Look to the future. Find some time every day or at least several times a week to talk about your hopes and dreams. Pray together often as a couple for the grace to run with endurance side by side in the race of life. Be sure to thank God for those in heaven who are praying for you as you run. And I think that's a nice summary there. Because when you think about this, and Teresa, I guess you can comment more because this is, you know, you and Dominic, this is your recipe here. Hold hands as a couple. You know, how many people are just rushing from here to there with each other? Come on, let's go, let's go. But stop, hold hands, maybe walking through the mall or when you're walking into church, holding hands, you know. I mean, just some of these things like taking time.
Well, to be a witness, that's one of the ways that we can be a light. And Pope Francis says there shouldn't be any pickled peppered Christians. He said that early on in his pontificate. And I don't think enough of us, enough happily married couples, show that joy to the world. Because think about what's happened to marriage. And we're not just talking about what happened with the Supreme Court, but think about how marriage has been broken down, the high divorce rates. It's very similar in the Catholic Church and in the culture. Not quite as high, but you know, we're not doing all that well. And so why aren't we out there celebrating each other and holding hands?
We don't understand what marriage is.
Right.
Marriage is this beautiful union where you're helping each other get to heaven. You're meant to serve each other. I mean, typical understanding of marriage is I'm doing it to be happy.
Right.
I want to be
What
happy.
can
You're
you
going to
do
make
for
me
me?
happy.
For me, yeah.
And the Christianity just completely turns that around and says, no, it's about serving and loving the other. And therein is your happiness that you're seeking.
Right.
You know, don't be looking at one spouse, another spouse. Who's going to make me happy? It's when you finally realize, no, marriage is about ultimately it's about heaven and about bringing your children to heaven.
Right.
That's what you see when you see those happy couples and no matter what, the kids are crying and all, they're happy because they understand the vocation. Very few married couples, I think.
Right. They don't even know what marriage means, as you said. Right. And it's a relationship. It's supposed to reflect the relationship of God. The marriage came to us. God came to us in a family. A family of three, the Holy Trinity. And in the beginning of the Bible, we see Adam and Eve. The end of the Bible, we see the wedding feast, the marriage, the marriage feast in heaven. And so it's not just quote unquote symbolic. It's everything who we are, male and female.
And it's
so
a
important.
Sacramental grace too.
Right.
A friend of mine wrote to me and said, hey, we just celebrated 5 years of our sacrament. I said, she understands that it's not just a wedding. It wasn't just, it's one day. It was, they received a sacrament wherein they draw graces every day for each other.
Well, the other important thing I think in that advice I just read, Teresa, is the part where you said, well, okay, if there's troubles from the past, leave them in the past.
Right.
Like I think you used the phrase, leave it in the tomb. And Father Frank, when he was my pastor, not parochial vocal at my parish, St. Charles in Staten Island, he used to give talks about this, and he used to say, press the stop button on the tape recorder, because what we tend to do is we rewind and we play that story, like maybe there was an argument about something, or maybe a big argument in the family or between the couple over something really serious, and okay, you forgave each other, but did you really forgive, or is you still in your mind replay it? So I like that idea of leave it in the tomb, bury it. It's gone. It's over, and go forward
and then
with each other.
celebrate every day. I mean, I think because Dominic and I almost lost everything in terms of our relationship. Every day is a gift. Even when I'm out of town, like we are this week, I'm calling him first thing in the morning. I leave notes around the house. I know you hear it. Father heard it this morning on the way over to the studio.
Calls Dominic in the morning.
And every day is a gift because
she calls him at night before bed.
Yep. Because we so appreciate each other. Okay, gosh, I can't believe we're almost done with the program. We have some really, really good homework.
Yes, we do.
For the couples.
Well, first, I just want to remind our viewers that the reason we have this beautiful statue here is she's the Kitchen Madonna, and she's available at the EWTN Religious Catalog, and she's in bronze now, which is beautiful. I know we all have her in our homes, and of course, the symbolism is so important here, is the kettle, which keeps us nourished in body, but also nourishing your soul. The broom is for purity and keeps the house clean, but also purity of mind and body. The keys here, which she will show us the keys to the kingdom, but also keeping the home safe. And it's a beautiful reminder, like Mother Angelica always said, keep those holy reminders around.
Yep.
And then, of course, for our homework, we mentioned a lot about Scott and Kimberly Hahn, and I'd like to point out they have a great book called Rome Sweet Home, and it's available also at the EWTN Religious Catalog. And of course, Teresa and Dominic's beautiful book, Intimate Graces, that I read that beautiful passage from, also available at the EWTN Religious Catalog. I want to remind our viewers to go to our website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com, for more information. They also can have all the homeworks are there, discussion questions, and past episodes, and they can sign up to receive our monthly newsletter. And then finally, if you're on Facebook, please go and like The Catholic View for Women.
I think the other thing we could do, it just came to me, and we could put a link on the website to the USCCB's website on marriage, which is really, really good. It's got great materials, and they actually had Intimate Graces as their book of the month back in January of 2016. So that's just foryourmarriage.org, and we'll put a link on our website because there's great resources there, including my book and other books. And we're just really excited to provide you with resources and to remember that there's hope. There's always hope. Even if you're struggling in your relationship, as we said, sometimes it doesn't work out, but don't give up. You know, offer it up to God, get some help, and remember that reversions and conversions can happen in marriage as well. Again, all the information on this show and all of our episodes, thecatholicviewforwomen.com. We hope you've enjoyed this discussion. My name is Teresa Tomeo, along with Astrid Bennett Gutierrez and Janet Morana. So good to be with you. You're watching EWTN and The Catholic View for Women. Let me throw that website out there one more time in case you're a new viewer, thecatholicviewforwomen.com. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Catholic View. Take care.